This truck shall forever be known as the Jorp Wrangler. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Scale Builders Guild. Thanks again for watching. Today we're taking a first look, run, and review of the new RC four-wheel drive cross-country Blackrock. And here it is. It's a truck. There's a lot of key features that make it look like a JK, but it's not. Okay? So it is a Jorp Wrangler Rubinaut. This is RC four-wheel drive's latest offering. It is on a completely new chassis. And let's talk about the chassis first, because to me, that's the most interesting part of this new release. And it's probably the thing that most people are the most interested in when they're taking a look at this. So let's get the body off of here and let's dive right in. One thing you'll notice right away is that this is not a carryover from a Trailfinder 2. There is not a lot that's carried over, actually. There are a few elements here and there. Most notably, the transmission, transfer case, those pieces we've seen before in other RC four-wheel drive models. It is a 2-speed. This is the R3 transmission. The motor mount is different than other examples that I've seen before from RC four-wheel drive, so let's get a closer look at that. As you can see, it does put the motor up quite high on the chassis. This is just straight on the ground here. You can tell that it is by far and away the highest element of this chassis. The transmission is mounted fairly low in the chassis though, and because of the nice taper that this chassis has, all of that does sit still quite low. As this is a trail truck, I'm not super surprised at the position of that motor. It's not meant to be a competition crawler, so having a high center of gravity for that motor and that transmission is not something I'm really going to give it any negative points on. It's, you know, that is what it is, and if we were making this to be a true comp crawler, there would be nothing that you would keep. For a trail truck though, totally acceptable. It is a different motor plate and mount though than what we've seen on other examples that use this transmission. As you can see, getting a better look at it right up front here, it's sort of like this cast metal plate that goes over this transmission. It does look like they've made it nearly impossible to clock this motor in any way, so you're going to be stuck with where that motor sits. To note though, from the factory, I did have to shim this motor mount, and I'm going to try to get a better shot of it here for you. You can actually see the axial 2mm shim that I had to put in there. It's a little bit of a spacer because this whole motor plate, you can see it's bent. I'm pretty sure that's not how that's supposed to be, and I did my best to try to bend it back into place, but just found that I couldn't get it quite where I wanted it to be, so I had to do that. Positives for it though, it's a nice smooth drivetrain. It is a 2-speed, as you can see. There's an extra twister servo here. This is one of the high torque waterproof servos that RC four-wheel drive offers. They use the same one for shifting that they do for steering, and we'll talk about that steering servo in a minute. Public service announcement time. When you get this truck home and you unbox it, do not immediately go outside and drive it. Do yourself a favor and go over all the bolts that are visible and torque them. There will be things that will be loose from the factory. There's not a lot of Loctite used, and because there's a lot of metal on metal contact in this chassis, you will definitely want to make sure that you torque all the bolts. If you don't, let me show you what can happen here. So I'm just going to loosen that bolt a little bit, and this one here too, because this is how they were when I got it from the factory. Look how much play gets introduced into the actual transmission just by untorquing 2 bolts. So make sure that when you get the truck home and you get it out of the box, I know excitement is a difficult thing to suppress, but you will want to do that. Torque all your bolts, locks everything nicely into position. I would even add some Loctite if I'm honest. I think that's probably a good idea for most RC four-wheel drive products because there's so much metal on metal, you will want to add some Loctite right away. All of this power from this 2-speed transmission, and there is a nice difference between first and second gears, so you are going to be able to take advantage of a 2-speed if that's something that you're really into. This will definitely go faster in second gear, and I've got some footage of that I will show you. All of that goes into RC four-wheel drive's transfer case here, mounted nicely on a new flat skid. This skid is entirely flatter and smoother than a lot of their skids in the past. It is not going to hang up on rocks nearly as often. You can see that I've already, because I've been driving this truck before I actually made a review of it, there has been some obstacles that have already scraped up against it, slid right over them without any issue, which is fantastic to see. The chassis itself is an 11.9-inch wheelbase, which is fairly unique in this market. Most manufacturers go 12 or 12.3-inch wheelbase. 11.9 is definitely going to limit your body choices outside of the BlackRock body that this truck comes with. Definitely, that's a caveat that I would put out there. Unless you're scratch building something or you really love that body, there won't be a lot of other choices for you out there. And to be fair, because of the coil and shock suspension system that this chassis has, to keep it realistic, there aren't a lot of options out there beyond Jeeps anyway. So that's sort of another strike against it. There's not a lot of versatility if you're trying to stay super scale. I don't want to make you think that there's nothing that you can do to fix this chassis to make it 12.3 inches. You can change the links in the rear and make it whatever length you wanted. To have everything centered up though, with the way they've mounted the shocks, you might have to make some spacer adjustments there. But again, not impossible to change the wheelbase if you're so inclined. These are RC4 Drive's K44 cast axles, and they look quite at home underneath a Jorp Wrangler. The nice offset front diff to the driver's side, which is accurate. I do like these smaller wheels and tires. The Compass RC4 Drive 1.55 wheel and tire combo really looks quite nice. It's a 5 lug, so they got that right. It's a good looking Steely with a nice looking tire in a decent compound that performs quite well. For a small, tiny tire, I think it actually worked quite well. That's good. Aluminum chassis rails, which taper out wider at the rear. You can see in this profile here, they're quite narrow at the front and do taper out in the rear, which is a nice scale detail. It does make this chassis look a lot more realistic and actually perform a little more realistic too. A nice big stamped steel battery tray along the back here, and if I didn't put on these battery straps, which I will remove briefly here, you can see that they've stamped RC4 Drive right into it. There is also this nice spacer here, it came on the rear of the truck here, but you can of course move this around to any number of these holes for whatever battery size you might be using. I'm using a Shorty 1800 mil pack, which I thought fit really nicely in there. One thing to note, none of these holes are actually tapped, except the rear ones. So if you want to use any of these, you will have to tap them yourself, or just smash a screw in there aggressively. Might work for you as well. A lot of link mount options here, as you can see in the rear. Lots of choices to adjust. I do like that it's coil and shock, both front and rear. That is sort of a Jeep thing that you could understand. It's also great because in the kit, RC4 Drive includes some bonus alternate spring rate springs, so you can change how the front and rear performs. I found yellow ones were installed on the truck and they were very firm, so I swapped them for the reds up front. So now there's a little more suspension movement up front and still pretty firm in the rear, which is just the way I like it. That's what I said. As this is an RTR out of the factory, you do get all of the electronics that you see included here, except for the Spectrum SR515 receiver. I swapped it out because the radio that comes with this truck is RC4 Drive's sort of standard radio, which I'm not a big fan of, mostly because you cannot use it one-handed. No matter how much I stretch it, my thumb's just not long enough to run this truck one-handed. So I did swap it out for my Spectrum DX5C. You do get the Outcry 3 ESC, which is their latest version. It is waterproof, so and apparently so are the servos as well. So this truck could be used to fjord a river if you were so inclined. I didn't test its waterproof capabilities. All the water was frozen where I was. Along with all the electronics, RC4 Drive does include a set of AA batteries for the transmitter, a battery charger with XT60 connector. This is a wall plug-in charger. You'd be better off charging it via the sun. It will take forever to charge with that thing. And a 3000 milliamp 7.2 volt nickel metal hydride battery pack, which is fine to get you started. And because it's a trail truck, 3S, 2S, not necessary, but definitely compatible with those batteries as well. While most of the construction of the chassis is aluminum, there are a lot more plastic parts than I remember being on an RC four-wheel drive truck. Both the shock mounts, the link mounts, even the retainers for the springs on the actual axles, front and rear, even the rear link mounts that are integrated into that spring retainer, those are all plastic. And wouldn't you know it, while I was driving it in second gear in colder weather, it wasn't freezing cold weather, but it was quite cold, I did manage to snap the front link mount. And while it looks fine now, it's just because I glued it for the purposes of this video. But if I were to give that enough torque, there you go, I did snap that whole piece, and it separates quite easily from its glued location. Now, I will chalk that up to the cold weather. I'm thinking that most of these plastics are probably a little more brittle when it comes to cooler weather, and that's just natural. So I'm not going to hold that against the truck itself or the construction of it. It's just user error, and I'm fully willing to admit that. So one thing I can say, caution, if you are going to be driving this in cold weather, maybe don't try to send it. Okay, final thing that I wanted to talk about on this chassis is the position of the front steering servo. I have no idea why it's on such an aggressive angle. As you can see, it's moved kind of forward, and I'm not sure why they did that. I'm looking at all of the geometry of all the links, and I guess it's because of the panhard and the position of where they put the panhard in relation to the steering servo. I mean, it's kind of weird. There's a ton of room. I'm not entirely sure why they did that or what the motivation was. Weird, right? Anyway, front and rear bumpers are included. They're not the best plastic. They do feel like they could be quite brittle, and if I hit the wrong obstacle at the wrong time of year, those would definitely snap off. The bumper mount does integrate in this trailer hitch mount too, so I'm sure you could add a trailer hitch and pull a trailer if that was something you were into as well. So there you go. That's sort of a first kind of overview of the chassis, and now that this link mount is broken, it's going to drive me crazy, so I think I'm going to stop for a second and glue that back in place again. Now that we've had a chance to go over that chassis, let's talk a little bit about the body. This is, of course, an ABS injection molded body. This BlackRock body comes unpainted, but it is molded in this nice blue color, which actually works quite well with the truck. I also took the time to paint these front marker lamps. They're clear when you get the truck, but the turn signals are already orange, so why not make those orange too? There are lots of details to it. You get really nice detachable fenders, front and rear. There is also wipers, door mirrors, door handles, an opening hood that opens with some magnet mounts, which is really cool. The rear part of the roof also comes off, as do the front panels as well. Nice spare tire is included as well. There are these sliders that are included. It's sort of a, more of a mall crawler style slider, and it is plastic, and that's integrated into the body, not the chassis, so those are going to get scraped up. But sometimes plastic is better than metal, certainly for sliding over obstacles anyway. Rear guards for the tail lights, which are pretty neat. Lots of nice scale details. It's a decent looking body. Scale-wise, looks-wise, I think they did a pretty decent job. I like how the truck looks. I like the stance that they put on it. It does look a little bit lifted with these smaller tires. You could probably go up a few millimeters on the tire size and actually get something to fill the wheel well a little bit better. You know, I like stuffing it in the wheel well. So let's talk about one thing that a lot of people have already talked about, and that is the fact that there is another grille behind this metal grille that they've included. Some nice decal sheets are included with the truck. You get a whole bunch of different splash options for the door panels, a bunch of other stickers as well. Additional stickers for the interior, although those are already placed on the truck, so I guess, if you case they fall off. And then there's a whole other sheet as well with some window decals, a bunch of license plates and bumper stickers as well, and some RC four-wheel drive swag logos as well. Do not attempt to follow. Okay, those are great stickers. I decided to add some of my own stickers to also kind of just jazz it up a little bit. Reuben knot, because this is a Jorp Wrangler, okay? Jorp hand for waving, I guess. And it's got a great molded interior as well. Nice roll cage is included as well. If this were easy to take off, I would take it off right now and show you that. Here, let's see here. Nope, we're getting it. Come on, come on, do it! Come off of here! But clearly it is not. I guess you need the power of Zeus to pull this roof off.
3 hours later.
So as you can see, you can remove the roof to expose the roll cage that's included as well, and you get a better look at the full interior. Certainly a nice way of displaying your truck if this is sort of your lifestyle, per se. It is cool to be able to have a truck that has the roof come off. Okay, so there you go. A pretty decent look at that body and all of the features included with it. Like I said, the mounting system, definitely unique. Haven't seen anything quite like this, certainly not from RC four-wheel drive before. To remove that body, there are 4 pins that are held in place with a little push-button system that RC four-wheel drive's created. You can see one of the pins right there. And this works pretty well. It is kind of difficult to get the body on and off quickly. It's easy to get it on. It's a lot harder to squeeze all 4 of those pins at the, a right amount of tension and actually pull the whole body off. It's nice that it's hidden. There's no body pins or anything exposed anywhere, and that's always nice to see. I do prefer that in all of my tiny trucks. Where do I think the cross-country chassis and body kit kind of falls down a little bit? Well, this size, for one, is definitely a weird one. 11.9-inch wheelbase isn't going to afford you a lot of options in the aftermarket. If you get tired of this body, or you decide that you want to change out this body for something else, you are kind of limited in your choices by the stock wheelbase. Yes, of course, you can change the wheelbase on your own later on, but it is kind of designed around this shorter wheelbase. This is more of a 10th scale size rendering of this body. So again, it's going to look kind of strange up against some of the other 9th scale stuff that you might have in your collection. For example, this truck, whatever it might be in real life, wink wink, is way bigger than a Hilux. These are small trucks, and there's no way that one of these is going to be as wide as one of these. Let me see if I can get a better angle of that. So as you can see, yeah, that size disparity is going to look strange up against other trucks on the trail. And in fact, other things that are exactly like this truck. Another example. Here is a licensed Jeep Wrangler JL, which is the latest iteration of the Jeep Wrangler line. You can see how much bigger this one is, because this one is a more traditional, at least for this current crop of trucks, 9th scale. So again, this one looks kind of comically small up against it. I do like the scale axles. I do like the scale chassis and the way it's laid out. The motor sits a bit high, and having that bent motor mount is a bit disparaging. The servo position is kind of strange, and I don't know why they ended up doing that. Plastic where they put it versus where they didn't is also kind of strange. Link mounts, shock and spring mounts, I would have made all of that metal. While I was driving it, and some very strange things were happening with the transmission. I'm not sure how this is even possible, but when I got put under some pretty extreme load, or I started to bind up, the front wheels would stop spinning, but the rear wheels would continue to spin. And I can't think of one single way that that would actually happen. So mechanically, I've got to figure that out. That's really strange. I'm thinking maybe a gear in the transfer case was loose, and it was allowing the front to just freewheel when it got under load, and the rear would just keep going. That's my best guess. I'll have to tear it down and see. Ultimately, it's a pretty good effort. I love the whole new design of the chassis. I like the body mounts. I like how it's all put together. It sort of feels incomplete. I also would have really liked to have seen inner fenders included in this kit. I know it's a ready to run, but I mean, everything else is already there. It couldn't have cost much more to mold up some Lexan inner fenders so we didn't see all the way through the truck like we do right now. It's a decent looking trail truck. It looks great in video and it performed really nicely, definitely to my standard. It is always a bummer to break things on the first run, but like I said, I am chalking that up to user error and I'm not going to blame that on the actual construction of the truck. With that in mind though, it would be great to have some of those CNC items on the truck rather than being listed as an option. The plastic pieces definitely let me down in that regard, and it does come down to the compounds and the temperature and everything else that gets put into making a plastic part. It would have been great to make this a 12.3 inch wheelbase as well. I think they probably could have gotten away with that and made it a 9th scale body at the same time. So yeah, not a terrible effort. I really wish that it was a little bit better than it is. So I mean, they got most of it right. They ended up on the 48th yard line. They couldn't shoot the goal. They forgot the mustard on the sandwich. Any of those analogies should apply. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the full review and run and first look at the new RC 4-wheel drive Cross Country Blackrock Edition. That's going to do it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more like it, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that notification bell so you get updates anytime there's a new video from the Scale Builders Guild. And stay tuned. We have lots more content coming, and I hope that you will enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.